Hello, my friends, and welcome to this episode of 10-Minute Tutorials. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know that this particular tutorial had to be broken up into two separate episodes simply because the technique required too much stuff to feature in just a single episode. So, after you watch this episode 1, be sure to come back for episode 2 so that you can see how everything turns out. And of course, as always, make sure if you enjoy the video, you click the subscribe button and do the whole like and share. Be sure to spread the word around. So, without any further ado, let's roll tape on this first one. Hello, my friends, and welcome to this episode of 10-Minute Tutorials, where I teach you all the tips, tricks, and techniques you need to know in order to make high-quality custom latex masks right in the comfort of your very own home. As you can see today, I am channeling my inner Bob Ross, and the reason for that is because the techniques I'm going to show you today rely upon some of the same things that Bob Ross himself needed you to understand, and that is trust in the technique and the tools that you're using in order to provide the effect that you're looking for. In this video, we're going to learn how to do a great skin texture for a zombie type character. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the tools that we're going to need to have. All right, for the tools in today's video, we're going to be using a Kemper Tools WS Wire stylus. This is available at most pottery stores for about $7, or you can get it online at Amazon.com. I'm also going to be using an untrimmed chip brush. This is the full length. I will also be using a chip brush that is trimmed down to just a little bit above an inch in length. I will also be using a couple of glazing brushes with very soft nylon bristles. I will also be using some reticulated foam. This is available at aquarium stores, and it's used as a filter material in aquarium tanks, but it comes in real handy. And I will also, of course, be using my dry brush, which I mark so that I never dip this in solvent. Lastly, I'm going to be using a piece of plastic. This is a little thicker than what you'd find for your average Ziploc bag, and it actually contains some audio cables, and I just cut a piece out of it on a folded area because I might want to have it folded over, or I might want to open it up and use it that way. And of course, we're going to be using our odorless lighter fluid. As always, whenever you're using that, you want to make sure that you use a lot of care and precaution. Don't smoke around it. Don't have open flames or any kind of source of spark because it is flammable. So, all right. Now, as you can see on this Sculpt, I've already done some skin texturing all along this side here. And this is what we're going to recreate, except we're going to be putting it up here and around this eye. Now, normally, I definitely recommend when you're going to be doing texture, try to make it so that you can sit down and do the entire texture in one sitting. And the reason for that is because you will find that as you begin to do texture, you're going to get into a kind of a mojo. And if you walk away from that and come back and try to replicate it, it becomes very difficult to try to do. So I definitely recommend when the time comes that you're ready to texture, allot yourself enough time to be able to do the whole thing. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go ahead and take our odorless lighter fluid, and I am going to fill up my little cup with just about halfway full. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my full length chip brush. I'm going to dip it in there, and all I'm going to do is get this a little bit wet. Okay, and that's because I always like to start my textures off with kind of a smooth surface, and I do have quite a bit of junk on here, so we're going to smooth all of that out real quickly. So just simply brushing it on there, and I'm going to continue to brush it around until I start to see the clay leaving brush strokes, and that means that the lighter fluid is beginning to penetrate into that top layer of clay. And that's exactly what we want. Once we start to see the brushes leaving generous brush strokes, then I'm going to change to my inch long, and I'm going to use a scumbling motion to just kind of sand down the surface. And this is going to help smooth everything out and get rid of any tooling marks. Just kind of give me a good blank canvas where I can work with. All right, and that's about good enough right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glazing brush. I am going to clean it up real quick, and then I'm going to try to wipe off as much of the lighter fluid as I possibly can. And now with just a very light touch, I'm going to just erase all the marks that that brush made. You don't have to worry at this point about brush strokes because we're going to be texturing, but we do want to start with something that's fairly smooth. Okay, that's pretty good right there. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to add some major lines, what I like to refer to as kind of expression lines. The best way to figure out where expression lines should go is, of course, to use a mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and make different facial expressions and take note of where those lines are. Now, this character doesn't really have a whole lot of room to work in, forehead wrinkles and stuff like that. So we're just going to add some general lines, and I'm going to be using that wire stylus tool. And I'm going to add a couple of good deep ones in the forehead, and I'm going to dig in pretty hard. Right there. We'll just add another one right there. And then what we'll do is we'll pretend that this line comes back out over here, and we'll just kind of carve in like so, and we'll pretend this one comes out right about there, and we'll just carve in just like so. Now, I want those to look a little bit more like wrinkles, so I will go ahead and take a triangular ribbon with a fairly small triangle on it. I'm going to anchor my finger somewhere where I'm not going to mess anything up, and I'm just going to shave the edge of these off just to round them out a little bit and get rid of that extra clay. I'm going to anchor somewhere else, and then I'm going to just round the edges of these off. And don't worry about leaving tool marks here. We're going to get rid of those in just a second. You just want to round these edges off. Just to make it a little bit more natural. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Just round them off. And as the line terminates, don't worry about getting in there too close, because part of our technique will help soften that up. This one is already at kind of an angle, but we're just going to hit it a little bit. And then the bottom one will have to hit a little bit more because the angle the tool was being held at. So we just pick those out, just knocking that edge off, doing my best to stay in character as Bob Ross. All right, now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and take a little bit more, just a little bit, fluid, and we're going to just kind of get it wet a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to dry off that brush. Just squish it until you get most of the solvent out of there. And now, again, I'm going to scumble. That's how we're going to get rid of the majority of those tool marks. And I'm not using a whole lot of pressure. I'm just letting the brush bristles sand away. And I'm using nice little small circles. There we go. Now, back to our glazing brush, which is relatively dry. And I'm going to go with the grain of the mark I just made. And the reason for that is because if I go across the grain, I'll actually fill it up, as you can see right there. By going across the grain, it digs it out. That's a little hint that you want to always kind of remember. You can make a line much shallower by going against the grain, or you can make it deeper by going with the grain. There we go. Just gonna get as much of that smoothed out as we can. All right. That looks pretty good. Now, if you have a small portable fan that's handy, this is a good time to use it, because what you can do is you can direct the fan onto the area that you want to dry, because we do want this to kind of dry up just a little bit. Or you can take a break, work on a different area, and wait for it to dry up. I'm going to go ahead and blow some air across this, and I'm going to give it maybe 10 minutes of time to dry up, and then we'll continue on. So let's give it a little break, and we'll be right back. Well, my friends, this concludes part 1 of the 2-part 10-minute tutorial. Be sure to tune in to part 2 in order to see how the zombie skin ends up turning out. Until then, stay scary, my friends.